the secret is I kept showing up. And I knew a lot of kids who were unbelievable who quit. And I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying I have the answer, and I'm sure I'll go through with my son, but I realized like I wasn't allowed to quit. Like it's I don't care if you're good, but you got to go. You got to be there. So that was a huge factor.
What's up, everyone? You're tuning into the Diamond Strong podcast. It's where you come feeling good and you leave feeling great. The action starts now.
How are you?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. I'm so excited to have you on, man. This is, I don't know, man. You have a lot of people talking a lot of good things about you. That's amazing.
I mean,
You must be doing something right.
I'm trying. I really am. I'm trying hard. That's all I can say. But thank you. It's very kind.
Yeah, that's all that. It's the effort that counts, I guess. Right at the end of the day, putting it in every day is what's really important, man. But I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about your story, and I know you have your own podcast. You've done podcasts in the past and stuff like that. So if anything is a little repetitive, I'm sorry. I just selfishly want you to tell it on our podcast if it's okay.
No, please.
Yeah,
I'll do the best I can. I know that much. So
that is great, man. So I really wanted to start kind of your childhood, man, your upbringing. You have an amazing story, and your success is obviously well documented. But I kind of wanted to just really get started when you were a kid and how you grew up. Maybe talk a little bit about your grandfather as well, that I heard a little bit about on another podcast and stuff like that, and maybe the impact that the people around you had to be able to shape you into the man that you are today.
Okay. I'll do my best to keep it brief. So I grew up in Fall River, Massachusetts, and I'm going to be real honest. I love Fall River. I love everything about it. I mean, they're, like any city, it has some challenges, but every city has challenges, right? So was raised by my mom, my dad, when was not in the picture from a very young age. And my mom raised two boys, my brother Mike and myself. So I saw, there's a few things that come into play here. And a part of my journey, if you will, has been studying my inner workings and behavior and my patterns, and trying to strengthen the ones that are great and trying to break down the ones that are bad. So I never really had a lot of healthy family templates to watch growing up. It just is. Like, I can certainly reference a few as I got older, but that's just what it was. So my mom is raising two boys by herself. She's working several jobs, and I saw her struggle, and I saw her really stressed, and I saw her, I don't think anyone plans to want to have a family by themselves. They want a partner. And that was a lot of tricky things that, people end up learning the hard way, like my mom did and we did. So, but over the course, I'm from an Italian family, so I ate a lot and I gained a lot of weight, and because of it, I was bullied. And I know all kids get bullied, but I feel like I got. There was a few moments that were really defining and that I struggled with, and I knew I didn't want it to happen again. So there was a period of my life. Will you prefer Will or Willie?
Willie, Will, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm good with anything. I
want to be respectful.
Willie's good. Willie's good.
Okay. So Willie, there's a period of my life where there was like some really harsh incidences that I still don't talk about. And I was like, man, I hated feeling that way so much that, call it trauma, triggers, but I never wanted it to happen again. So my answer was, let's just stay away from people. And my grandfather noticed this, and my grandfather to give you a clear or better understanding of what he was in our city, he was a very respected man because he was a very kind human being. He helped so many kids and so many people, and that was kind of like his mission in life. He was just super caring. And 30 years later, I realized like that has had such a serious impact on the way I do things and the way I think about things. And I wanted to be like him because he was the guy who pulled me aside and said, "Why are you not hanging out with kids? Why are you avoiding school? Why are you avoiding people?" And it was just because I didn't have the tools to deal with that as a young person. I think most young kids don't have the tools to deal with that. So, you know, I really turned to him for mentorship, advice, guidance, and his guidance was, all right, you're coming with me. He brought me to the local boys club. I'm sure you went to the boys club when you were a kid, right?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Right. And I bet it left a lasting imprint on who you are as a human being. So he took me to the boys club and he showed me the weight room. And the weight room at the boys club was terrible. Well, I mean, when you saw about a dungeon, it was a dungeon. I think they only had like 6 45-pound plates. A couple of them weighed like 42 and a half pounds.
Close enough. Close enough.
Right. It was wild. So he took me through a whole weight training session and showed me what to do. You know, he was kind of tough on me in a playful way, but I just like being around my grandfather. That was the truth. And he just, because he was loving and he was caring. And the next day he's like, okay, we're going back. And I was like in shock. I'm like, I can't believe we have to do that again. He's like, well, we have to do it every single day. I'm like, I can't do it every single day. He's like, no, we can do something every single day. We don't have to do that, but we can do something. So it was super hard for me, Will. It was like I remember like, oh my God, my body's screaming at me. I'm breathing heavy. I feel like I'm going to die. And he kind of taught me this one thing, like, you know, it's never as bad as you make it. And like, all you have to do is finish that set. Just finish what you're doing. Finish what you're doing, and then we'll focus on the next thing. And I remember him telling me that, and I still use that as self-talk today. So he got me through it. And honestly, that's when it started, and it just kept going. And slowly, I went from a very insecure, shy young man who was obese to confident, feeling better about myself, more able to look people in the eye. And then I started to play sports. And I wasn't really good at sports, but I wanted to play sports because all the men in my family, and the truth is, all the women in my family respected athletes.
Wow.
And I knew that it doesn't matter if it's football, ice hockey, or baseball, but I need to play a sport because they're watching that TV and all they're talking about is athletes. These men are obsessed with athletes. So if I'm an athlete, that equals respect. And I really wanted that from my family and from the people that I was surrounded by in my community. So that's kind of how it happened. I learned at a young age that you don't really get confidence by snapping your fingers or reading a book. You have to do something that helps you build confidence day in and day out. And my confidence grew because I started from doing 2 push-ups or 3 push-ups. It was 20, 30, 40, 50. And then it took me years to do a pull-up, do a proper pull-up. And then, it started, and I knew what I was putting myself through. It was kind of like I had this secret hack and this pill of like energy and enthusiasm. And I was like, no matter what I do, it's never going to be that hard. When I say that hard, there are certainly things that you could do that are cerebral or, hard work at a desk. Of course, there are things like that. But I'm talking about the pain that I was feeling in my muscles and in my heart. I knew nothing would get that bad. And that was like the foundation of, like, truthfully, the rest of my life.
Man, you kind of hit so many good points there, and I'm trying to stick to one here, but there's just so many great things that you said, because as human beings, I think we forget that doing things that are hard is okay, right? Like, I think sometimes we shy away from the hard things, right? And it's like, No, the more you do hard, the better it's gonna the better you're gonna be at the easier things, right? Everything else becomes easier, right?
Right.
Even though it may seem hard to somebody else, but if you've done something harder, it eases all the other pains in your life. But another thing that I wanted to kind of hit on that you talked about is the impact of a very important male figure in your life, right? How
Mhm.
do you how do you think it affects kids nowadays, maybe not having that figure or things of that nature? Because it seems like you needed that. Like you really, really needed your grandfather. Like you were trying to decipher what was good and bad in life. And maybe did you have a hard time actually seeing what was a good habit, what was a bad habit? You know,
I mean, the truth is when you're, you know, call it 10 through 16, 17, I don't think you really know what a good habit is and a bad habit. Am I right? I don't think you know. And I would have paid attention to anyone who would have paid attention to me. And I think so. Well, many of us still do that as adults. Like it's like if you enable a person, they're like, oh, that person likes me. That person is my friend. You know, I someone who I know very well posted this thing. Surround yourself with people who want more for you, not more from you. But I don't agree. I mean, it's like I want more from the person, meaning I want you to be your best self. And I'm not going to allow you to race to the middle and live in mediocrity. And if I do, I'm not really a great friend, right?
oh, I think I understood now what you were saying. Got it. I get it now. I get it. I get it. You want more from the person you're speaking about because you don't want them to be half-ass or
No.
anything of that sort.
You know, there's a lot of people in this world that want success for you to hear, right? To stay, but they want you to be successful, but I want you to be here below me. I don't want you to do better than me. And a lot of times those people are dressed as friends or even family. So like they just can't help themselves. Those are the personalities of people with personality disorders. But what you have to understand is that person can be nice to me, but they may not want the best for me. The best for me is something that ends up being the best for them. They don't genuinely support what I want in my life. And that's a huge, powerful thing that it would take years to understand that, right? So, and to go back to your original question, I didn't know what a positive habit was and a negative habit was. So, you know, like in the neighborhood, you pay attention to the guys. I would pay attention to the guys who got respect, no one messed with, got a lot of girls, and drove nice cars. That's it. I mean, that's really it. Had nice things. And then I realized that it's kind of like, how old are you, Will?
28.
You're young, man. Wow, that was a good year for me. Uh, so there's a movie. Have you ever seen the movie called The Bronx Tale?
Is that the mob movie?
Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep.
So there's a scene in the movie where the kid looks up to the mob boss because the mob boss is respected. He's feared because he said fear lasts longer than love. And the guy gets a lot of girls and he's worshipped by his crew. But then over the course of the movie, at the end of the movie, the son realizes that his father is actually the hero. And his father's the hero because he got up every day at 5 a.m. and went to a job for 30 years, respecting everyone. He was loved by everyone because he was a good person, you know? And so my understanding of what I wanted to be like and what was positive significantly changed as I got older. And I said, I just want to be a person that does good things, right? And I'm far from perfect, and I made a ton of mistakes. But at the end of the day, I started paying attention to people like my high school football coach, who I saw recently. I mean, he's been a friend of mine for 40 years, and he's he's a good person. He's a family man. He has a wife. He has children, and he leads by example. He lives by example. My college football coach, he has 4 kids, and he's like a father figure to me because he always wanted more for me than he wanted for himself. You know,
Am I hearing selfless?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's hard, right? Because, you know, you have a podcast, you have work, like you want things that are going to help you. I don't know if there's anything wrong with that, but when push comes to shove, do you have children?
Not yet. I pray to
Someday?
God every
You
day.
want someday? So someday you have a boy and a girl, two boys. Your job is, to want to hold them up so high and push them to be their very best. I mean, I believe that. I'm not saying you need to make it easy for them, but I believe that it's really important that you're the facilitator of that. And they have to surpass you. And that's really how you do your job. If you always keep them successful, but down here, then you might have some really challenging personality traits and it's all about you.
So how you're a father, correct?
Yes, my son is 8 months old.
Oh man, God
You,
bless.
you might hear him in the background.
God bless you, man. That's awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about what you, I guess 8 months, you're just starting out, right? And I guess nobody really knows how to be a parent till you're a parent. Is that
Right.
correct?
It's correct for me.
That's what I've heard. I don't know. That's exactly why I asked. But
Right.
what are you planning to do with your son to make sure that he doesn't live in your shadow, but you push him up and make him better than you, right? And hopefully make him better than you, right?
I mean, there's a lot of examples that I'll pull from my life, but I think the ultimate sign, if you will, of having a positive relationship with your children is that they can truly talk to you about anything. Like I don't want my son, like I wouldn't tell my mother stuff because I feared that it would add more stress, or Lord knows she didn't want to know that I was running around the streets or doing something that I absolutely shouldn't have been doing. I was like super afraid to like put any more on her plate. But there were also a lot of things that I struggled with. And my mom was a pretty spectacular woman, and she was my hero. She was my mom. She was my father. She was everything. And I used to, celebrate her on Father's Day. True story.
Wow.
Um, but I also needed to talk to some people or her about things and I didn't want to do it. And I would love for my son to have the type of relationship and connection with me that he can really ask me so I can just give him my best perspective, you know? And maybe that'll be super valuable for him and give him, you know, positive guidance. But also, like, I mean, every day I get asked, "Hey, your son going to play football? Is he going to be a linebacker?" And I always say, "Brother, man, I would like my son to either get golf clubs or do whatever he wants. You know, really do whatever he wants. Like if that's what he wants to do, like I have like crates of sports memorabilia, and we have a picture that's hung up, and he has no idea what it means now, but soon he will. And I kind of want to put it in the closet because I don't want to influence him.
Oh, to push him one way or another.
Like he's gonna go, I got to do that. I got to wear that number, and I got to be a linebacker. You know, like that just is. It's just the most natural thing in the world, and I don't need him to be a world class athlete. I don't need him to be a world class student. I just want him to be a world class person. Like that's really the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
And my wife is an incredible human being. So I think that we're going to do everything we can. I know there are other circumstances and variables that come in over the course of his life and could significantly influence him. I'm well aware of that. I just hope that we do enough early on that when he's 14 or 13 or 16 and he's in a room and they decide to do something that's really not going to help him, I just pray that all the stuff that we do with him and all our talks and all the influence guides him in the best way.
Yeah, man. That's the toughest part, right? I'm sure you remember. Let's actually talk about high school. Let's talk about that time for you, because you obviously talked about not only your grandfather, your mom, but your high school coach.
Yeah.
How was it playing high school sports? did you face some adversities and some tough times where you had decisions to make that could have maybe led you in a different direction than what you went?
Yes, certainly. I mean, I told this story recently. I went to one of my dear friends' homes, and he was like one of my best friends. I had like three kids that were like my closest buddies in life, and this guy was like we were inseparable. I went to his house, and he was like in eighth grade, and I remember him like going into the house at like 3 o'clock, and he like cracked the beer, and he just started drinking the beer. But he didn't drink a beer like let's sneak the beer. He would just drink a beer every day. And it wasn't one beer. It was like maybe he has one, maybe he has four. But this was like he's in eighth grade. And I
Like
remember,
normal. He was drinking.
yeah, right. And I remember thinking, it's just beer, whatever. But he also had a cigarette in his mouth. And then the next year he had a beer, then he had a drink, then he had a joint. And then the next year it was a bunch of other stuff. And it just kind of kept doing this, right? And this guy was a phenomenal athlete. He was an honor roll student. But in his home, he had a parent that just drank on the regular. It was just a drinker, straight up. And I remember asking my mom, how come I never see you drink? And how come there's no alcohol in this house? And she said, it's not good for you. Like, don't get me wrong, my mom drank, but not around us.
Nice.
And she didn't have it in the house. She's like, look, if I don't do it, you're not going to do it. She's like, if I do it, you're definitely going to do it. And it's true, even to this day. Like I'll have a drink here and there. I'm just not a drinker. Like I certainly do, and I'm not against it. But it's not something like I could go 8 months without having a drink. I don't ever think twice about it.
You wouldn't even notice it. You wouldn't even notice it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, I haven't had a drink. I'm like, no, it's no big deal. I'll have a glass of wine. I'll have, whatever, tequila, but I'm not, I couldn't. I'm not, I don't need it. And then I realized that this young man who was my dear friend, he was drinking all the time. I put up a post about it. There was one of my close friends was the number one high school basketball player in the country. Is in fact, when I was playing for the Patriots, he was playing for the Celtics.
Oh
and we grew up together. So it's actually, the statistic is the only two athletes, professional athletes, to play at the same high school for the same hometown teams at the same time in history.
Wow.
And he could have been Steve Nash. He could have been John Stockton. I mean, he was unbelievable, but he went down a challenging road as well. So I think I saw all these kids doing these things, and I realized that, man, like they had all this talent and potential, and I was like down here. But the one thing I did have was I for some reason I developed discipline at a very young age, and I don't know what it was. I just I really crave discipline. I remember I tell this story all the time. And by the way, I've heard David Goggins say this, but he said it 20 years after me. I was watching the movie Rocky, and I remember, like, this scene. You've seen Rocky, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
So, the scene in Rocky 2. I saw Rocky 1, and I was like, I hate Rocky 1 because nothing comes out of it. Like he fights, but he loses, and that's kind of like how it starts. Like he lost, right? But we both know what happened. He lost, but he kind of won, right? Because he took the guy the distance, and it was like, oh shit, this guy's no joke, right? This guy, now he knows it gave him life, right?
Yep.
So in Rocky 2, it was like all the news and media said, well, Apollo won, but this guy took him a distance. And by all accounts, it looked like he beat the crap out of Apollo, right? Yep. Even though his face looked like hamburger meat, right? So it was like, I remember seeing that. And then Rocky 2, they both go down together. And then Rocky happened to get up 1 second before. He got up 1 second before. And I remember thinking, wow, it was so close. That's how he won. Basically, Apollo was on a knee and he stood up. And that's how Rocky won. And I was thinking, it just did something to me. It was like an electric shock to my system. And that night, I put out my jogging pants, my sweatshirt, my winter hat, because I'm in Massachusetts. And my mother's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to go for a run in the morning, just like Rocky." And this is like 13 years old, man. And she's like, "You can't go outside. It's going to be like 10 degrees outside." And I said, "No, I'm going to go for a run to the high school, which is like a mile away. I'll do my sprints and my work, and then I'll run back home." I'll never forget, like, I was the tough guy the night before, right?
Yeah.
Morning comes and I'm like, shit, it's cold out. It's like really cold out, right? I put on a sweatshirt, t-shirt, put on a sweatshirt, put on another sweatshirt. Then I put the hat on, I put the long johns on, I put my sweatpants on, I put my socks on, sneakers on, and I look at my hands and I'm like, it's really not that cold out. I don't need to put gloves on. So I start running and I'm running and I'm like, and I'm running and I'm like, I should have put gloves on, but I don't want to be soft, right?
Yeah.
So half a mile in, I have my hands inside the sweatshirt and I'm holding the sweatshirt. And then I get to the high school. Number one, I didn't account for the gate's going to be locked. The gate's locked because it's like 4 a.m.
Yeah. Nobody's there.
No one's there. It's pitch dark. And by the way, it's not the best neighborhood. So then I have to hop the fence. Then once I hop the fence, it snowed. So the track there's no like clean track. The track has like snow and ice on it.
Yeah. Terrible conditions to run.
So I'm like, for some reason, I thought the track would be clear. I didn't realize it snows on everything. And so now I have to run the sprints, like slipping and sliding. I told myself, well, that was my excuse not to run that fast. So I run the sprints and I do them all. They were like, dude, I think they were turnovers. Like I have to do like 100 yards down, 100 yards back. Then it was 50 down back, 25 back. And I remember I ran home. After that, I'm warm. So then I jogged home. And when I finished, I felt so good about what I had accomplished. And I was like, I remember standing outside and I was thinking, I wonder how many kids just did that at 13 years old in the cold by themselves in the dark. Now, I have no doubt that there were other kids who did it, but not many.
No.
Not many, no. So I was thinking like that it didn't really make me better as an athlete, but it made me feel good. And I tell kids this all the time. Look, when you feel good, when you do things that are hard, you feel good. And when you feel good, you play good. It's just a fact. So that was the start of my craziness and discipline. And I just started doing that. It was like, I know I'm not apologizing. I used to apologize for it all the time, but I don't apologize for it. That's just who I am. And I was like, I realized there are awesome things to that. And I realized there are unhealthy things to that. So I just know that I was building myself up and I felt good. And then I go to school and then I lift weights and people didn't realize I was up at like 4 a.m. doing it at 13.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I think I was lucky enough to have a father that instilled that into me at a very young age. And he said, hey, like if you do what others aren't doing, you're going to continue to improve better. And it's funny. You talked about Goggins. I get mad at the Kobe video that he talks about. Oh, I work out at 4 a.m. and then I work out at 8 a.m. And it pisses me off because I've been doing that since I was in middle school, and I'm like, my dad used to say, hey, you wake up, you work out before school. And this is, 12, 13 years old, and then continue to do it all day long. And over a long period of time, you're going to build an animal. And of course, that's what ends up happening. But can you tell me about recruiting and sports now? Let's transition into the football, right? Obviously, you have this sick obsession now at 13, 14 years old with maybe improving yourself, right, mentally. Can you talk to me about trying to get to a school? Obviously, you're from a small place, right? And you're trying to go to a Division I college, I'm guessing. Was that always your goal?
Well, I lived in a apartment complex called President Village. Mm-hmm. And I was a latchkey kid. Do you know what that is?
No, I have no idea.
A latchkey kid is when your mother gives you the key, you go home, you open the door, you cook yourself a meal, you do the laundry, you do everything and you're like 12, right? Or 11. Like,
Sounds like you're a grown man, is what you were.
yeah, exactly. Like you're certainly not, but you're trying to fake it, right?
Yeah.
So because my mom had to work several jobs, number one, she can't afford a babysitter or a after school daycare.
Yeah.
And then number two, she had to trust me, right? Because of my brother and myself. And she's like, you gotta do these things. And I gotta be able to trust you. And we don't have another plan B. This is what it is. So I went home one day and I was obsessed with like anything I could get my hands on. Like early on, I loved comic books because all the characters in comic books, they all had like 8 packs and they were strong and they looked fit. And I was like, I want to look like that. And then it transitioned into fitness magazines, bodybuilding magazines, but mostly sports magazines, Sports Illustrated. We have I don't know if you're familiar with these, but the College Football Preview magazine.
I'm not familiar with that, I guess.
Right. It's times have changed, but Straight and Smith had one. Sporting News had one. There was a publication called Anthon, Anthon, and they would rank the players and talk about the players. And I mean, I just was obsessed with like following these players, like obsessed. And I even subscribed. I saw a game on TV. I saw a Notre Dame football game, and I loved the way the gold helmets were gold, and I loved the stories. At the time, Notre Dame was everything.
Yeah.
And the middle linebacker was Michael Stonebreaker. The defensive tackle was Chris Sorich. The defensive back was like, Des Bryant. I can tell you like all the not Des Bryant. I think it was Brian, not Brian Young. Brian Young was the defensive tackle. But I kind of knew all the players. That's the
You were obsessed with Notre Dame. You loved it.
It really was. So I subscribed to the Notre Dame school newspaper.
Wow.
In Fall River, Massachusetts, for like
that was the only one going over there, I bet.
$3.50 a year, right? So there was a woman in my neighborhood who saw me reading these magazines, and she goes, "What kind of magazines you like?" I said, "Well, I like sports. I really like sports, and I'm from New England, so I like I was a Red Sox fan, but mostly it was like Celtics, Patriots all day, Bruins. Like I was obsessed." So she says, "Okay." The next day, I'm upstairs and I hear this loud bang in the front door. So there was a screen door, and then there was the wood door. And I run downstairs, and she had dumped a trash bag full of sports magazines in the front door. And I was like, what the hell is going on? I'm like, and I see these magazines, and like, first of all, each magazine at the time cost like a lot of money. We call it $1, $2, $3 photos, whatever it was. But there was like 100 magazines there.
Wow.
And I was thinking like, how did she do this? And I thanked her, and she said, "Well, I work at a company where all the magazines come on this conveyor belt. And if there's a mistake on the magazine, I just take it off." So she just took them all off, right? She was just like, she's like, "I'm taking all of these on." And I was like, "Wow, it's so nice." And so I just folded them in my arms, and I kind of made a few trips up the stairs. And I'm looking at these magazines, and I'm like, it was like euphoric. I was like, some people are looking at like nudie magazines. I'm looking at sports magazines, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm looking at these athletes who are like just iconic and like superheroes. And I start studying them. And I could tell you top 10 linebackers, top 10 defensive tackles, top 10 running backs, top 3 quarterbacks, what the All-American team is, where the players are from, if they're academic All-Americans, their height, weight, whatever, their statistics in regards to tackles, sacks, whatever it is. And I start ripping the pages out, and I'm hanging on the wall, putting them all over the wall. It's like wallpaper.
Wow.
And the wall was covered in these things. And my mother was like, what the hell is that? You're going to ruin the wall. And I said, like, I used to sit there and just stare at the pictures. And I say that Michael Stonebreaker, that's Chris Sorich, that's Lawyer Malloy when he was in at Washington. Like, I mean, these players, like I knew everyone. A big picture of Tony Mandrit, just the incredible bulk, 6'6", 315 pounds. And my mom would ask me questions, and I said, I'll tell her who those players are. I'm like, that's Ivan Caesar from Boston College. He's a middle linebacker. He was number 88 because he was a tight end in college. And I was recounting these things, and I think there's a lot to be said for when you love something, it's so much easier to study, focus, and remember. And statistically, I was like no one believed me. Like even coaches, when they started recruiting me, didn't believe it. So I became obsessed with football. And then I firmly believe like I couldn't play football at a young age because I was so heavy. So I wasn't allowed to play Pop Warner because there was a weight restriction.
Oh, so you were, wow.
Yeah. So I had to go to like 2 cities over to a place called Swansea, Massachusetts to play in this youth league with a bunch of older kids because I was so big. And I got killed, but I was big. And I just kept showing up. I was not, I'm not trying to be humble. I was not good, but I just liked putting the equipment on and it excited me of the possibility of being good. It just excited me. And I remember when the first coach goes, all right, down and back. So you have to run from one side down the goalpost and back. I mean, I couldn't even make it. I couldn't even make it. I mean, I was like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done, right? So it just puts things in perspective. The secret is I kept showing up. And I knew a lot of kids who were unbelievable who quit. And I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying I have the answer, and I'm sure I'll go through it with my son, but I realized like I wasn't allowed to quit. Like it's I don't care if you're good, but you got to go. You got to be there. So that was a huge factor, huge factor. So and I just kept going and kept going and kept going. And the interesting thing is, Will, I never played football. So I was watching, I was looking at these magazines, and my mother had a friendship with a gentleman who let us borrow all these VHS tapes, and it was all highlight films. And there was two there that I watched fanatically. One was big blocks and king size hits of the NFL, and the other one was Crunch Course. And Crunch Course chronicled the best linebackers like Dick Butkus, Mike Singletary, Lawrence Taylor, Derek Thomas, Andre Tippett. And I started studying them, and I'm saying, oh, I want to do that. Like, I want to run up to a guy, pull the back of his shirt, punch the ball out. And I just kind of I spent so much time in visualization. Like, this is what I'm going to do. So when I got out on the football field later on, not at that youth league, I was terrible. But when I started to play at the high school level, I started to act out those things. So my coach would say, where did you learn how to do that? I said, I saw it on a VHS tape. That was it. Like, that was really it. And then like Junior Seau, they said, remember Junior Seau?
Of course.
They said Junior Seau was like just reckless, right?
Yep.
So he wouldn't even pay attention to the call. He would just start sprinting upfield. So I did that all the time. And the coach was like, you can't do that. And then I'd hit the quarterback in the mouth and he'd be like, oh, hey, that was good. Right? So it just started to make me feel like, oh my God, I'm obsessed. I'm not obsessed with football. I'm obsessed with that feeling of making that play. When I made that play, it was like this thing where I felt really good about who I was. And I understand that that's probably not a great pattern but I felt so good because what I was thinking about, Will, was, do you remember all those times you got up and ran in the cold when no one was up? Do you remember all those times you were just like watching film for fun, but watching film like you've already, Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hour rule. You already put in your 10,000 hours.
Damn, man.
Already. And I was like, how is this happening? Because I had put so much time in that I'd have to try to be bad at that point, You
talk about, and I hear it in your voice, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have like this thing, you said, oh, I don't like apologizing about it, but you have this thing in your head that keeps taking you back to like, man, maybe it was bad that I was that obsessed. And maybe that has something to do with things that have happened in your life now, but for time, we'll leave that alone. But yeah. I don't know, man. I think, and I say this a lot to very successful people, because they have that same problem that they keep looking like they're going back and forth in their head. Like, should I be working this hard at it? Should I not be? Should I be obsessed with this? Should I not be? I think it's a great thing because that's the reason you are as good as you are. If you wouldn't have been that obsessed and you wouldn't have put in those type of hours, maybe you wouldn't be where you are today. So you'd
Yeah.
almost be changing that the course of time, right?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that it, there's always people in my life that say that's not healthy or that's not good, and I always say define good. Just like really define good. Like people say, I don't know if that's healthy. Define. It's also not healthy to tell someone else that they're unhealthy, right? Unless you're a therapist and you're paying them for it, right?
Yes.
So like, there's so many ways. Like I don't know anymore. Will what good is, what bad. All I know is that that was me. That's what was important to me. I was unapologetic about it, but I think I want to be really, I'm always trying to be super careful. Like there's people even today, like, the bullying in high school, there's things today they say, Marc doesn't do this. Marc doesn't do this. Marc doesn't do this. Marc doesn't do this. And I go, you're never going to hear those things from people who, you know, are doing extremely well. I'm not saying doing extremely well financially. I'm saying people who feel good about where they are in life. You're just not going to hear those things from those people. They're going to say, that's awesome. Or you're doing something great. So I'm mindful of my message. I'm also mindful of like not getting any negativity on me. But to go back to what we were saying, it's like, that's just who I was. That made me happy. That made me feel good. And this is what I say, like, maybe it wasn't healthy to one extent, but you know what was really healthy? I wasn't the drinker. I wasn't the druggie. I wasn't doing all those things. I was focused on this. And it had its pros and cons, but it got me this far, right? It got me structure. It got me discipline. It kept me away from a lot of things. It got me a scholarship. It got me where I am today. Like those things really helped me. So like I just, I know like a guy wrote something on Instagram the other day. He was like, but don't you think your parents for the genetics you have, because you're like a superhero, you have superhero genetics. I'm like, bro, I hear what you're saying, but I literally just saw it. He goes, I said, look, I know what I appear to have superhero genetics, but I also put more work in than anyone. Really, at the time, I was in the 1% of the 1% that put that kind of work in. I know that for a fact. And then the other side is I don't have great genetics. My father died at a young age. Okay. I didn't know him, but he died at a young age. And I know what he died from, but he still died at a young age. His father died at a young age. They all died in their 40s, bro. I'm 47. So I don't know what to say. All I know is that like I don't have great genetics. That's why I do what I do, because I know I don't have great genetics. And like maybe I die, God forbid, maybe I die, soon. But I wouldn't have made it that far had I not been as healthy as I am. I just know that. So, I
Yeah,
don't have great genetics. I work to get here. That's all.
amen, man. That's one of the things that people I think put on others when they're not being the best version of themselves.
Right.
So
No,
it's
for sure.
easy.
For sure.
It's easy for them to do that. Can you tell me? I know. Are you good on time? Do you have 10 more
Good on
minutes?
time. I'm just checking something. I'm sorry to do this during your podcast.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. I'm sorry about that. I'm very
I have
keen on
time.
you. But can we talk a little bit about getting into professional sports? Obviously, playing at the highest level, but it wasn't very easy, right? I'm looking at your, when you played, and obviously you were in the NFL, then you took a trip out of the NFL,
Yeah.
and then you took a trip back into the NFL, and everybody knows you for playing in the NFL, and oh man, that's amazing, but you went through a lot of adversity,
No,
right?
yeah.
And I could guess that. I not that I played at the level that you did, but I got to play at the professional level, and I understand kind of how hard it is. Can you explain to me what it was to be in the NFL, go to Barcelona, play out of the NFL, and then be able to work your way back? Like, what kind of mental things did you have to deal with at those times that was like, hey, I need to fight. Like, talk about that perseverance. Talk about maybe that obsession kicking back in at that certain time. How did it feel to get knocked down and then pick yourself back up?
Well, when I was in college, when I got to college, I was a linebacker. I was they say 6'2". The truth is I'm like 6'1". That's the truth. And if anything, I'm 6 feet 3/4, but I say 6'1", 6'2". I used to say I'm 6'2", and then I still stand near 6'2" people, and I realize I'm 6'1". So, but I was a linebacker, and it's not that I wasn't great, but I know I hustled and I made a lot of plays. So I got one scholarship, and when I got to college, you know, the coach goes, "Hey, go stand over with the defensive lineman." So I go stand with the defensive lineman, and I remember something to the effect of, "When am I going back with the linebackers?" He said, like, "Never." Yeah. So I was thinking, like, man, I'm not a defensive lineman. A defensive lineman is like 260, 270, like jacked, like. So I told him, like, I can't play defensive line. And that was the last time I ever told that coach I can't. He said, "You can be great at anything you want in this life. I believe in you. But more importantly than me believing in you is you have to believe in yourself. Get out of my office." So I started to play defensive line, and I remember we had like 10 defensive linemen, and there's only two spots. One technique, three technique. But one spring, everyone got hurt. Like everyone. And I play like every snap in Richmond, Virginia, over 100 degrees. Like, man, I lost so much weight in a practice. I couldn't eat enough. I couldn't eat enough. So I mean, I went into that at like 219, and I was getting demolished. But I redshirted my first year, and then I played defensive line, started every game as a redshirt freshman, and I got like pulverized, like crushed. Because I remember playing against the University of Massachusetts. The guard was 310, the center was like 300 pounds, and they would just drive me into the ground. And that wasn't even a big offensive line, but they were strong. I remember the guy, if he ever hears this, I wonder, his name is Ron Felice. He was a monster. But he crushed me every play. And then I put his picture in my locker, and I remember thinking, I got to be 240. 240, I'll be able to hold my own. So between then and the next year, and by the way, my first year I had one sack. I had one sack, and it was luck. It was all luck. I kind of fell on the guy. So I'm lifting and I'm training hard. And because of my history in the weight room, I was a bit advanced strength, and I got real strong. And we went back and played that dude, and I like took it to him, man. Like I just took it to him. And I remember thinking, okay, we took a step forward. I'm stronger. I'm faster. By the way, I'm like 18 years old or 19. He's like 23. So, he's a senior. So
Yeah.
I realized 240, if I'm 255, I'll be able to like smash people to pieces, right? So I get up to 255, and my junior year I had 14 sacks.
Sheesh.
And I was an All-American. In my second year, I was an All-American and the Defensive Player of the Year in the league, and I had like crazy numbers. So the coaches, I'm thinking I can't play in the NFL because I'm not big enough to play defensive line. But the scouts start looking at me as a linebacker. So I'm like, I wasn't good enough to be a linebacker in college, but I'm going to be a linebacker in the NFL? How does that work? So now I'm getting scouted to be a linebacker. I do my pro day. Everything is going well. I get drafted by the New York Jets in the 6th round. Mm-hmm. I go to camp with the Jets, and I think that time, Bill Belichick was my defensive coordinator, and he actually spent a lot of time with me. And I needed this experience. I got cut. I was like one of the last guys, or the last day of cuts, and I think they had like down to 5, and I got called. Dick Haley, the GM, head of player personnel, took me into Belichick's office, and he said, "Look, I think that you have a lot of potential, and I firmly believe that you can play in this league." He said, "But you need reps at linebacker at this level. So if you can catch on with another team, you can get practice reps, you can play special teams, and maybe you go to Europe." And I was like, all right. It was really cool. Belichick wasn't the Belichick he is today, but he was still respected. Mm-hmm. So I go to the Patriots. I play. I get picked up. I'm on the practice squad. Then, like halfway through the year, I get activated. It's like special teams, and then the next year, they get rid of Pete Carroll, and they bring in Belichick. And then one of the first things he says is, "We're gonna send you to Europe." And I was thinking it was like a demotion. He said, "You're gonna go to Europe. Number one, you're going to Barcelona, so you're gonna have the best time of your life." And he goes, "Number two, if you really focus and get a lot of reps and do what you're supposed to do," he said, "you're gonna make this team." So I went there. The thing about like playing in Europe, I have a picture. Certain cities, the stands are packed. Where I was, Barcelona is not an American football city. It's a soccer city.
Soccer.
So the stands are empty. Like you're playing in a professional football game and you're fighting for your life because you can still get cut over there. And the stands are empty. So talk about like it's what you do while no one's watching that matters most. That's
There
exactly
was nobody watching.
no one watching. So I mean, you could have 12 tackles and no one's going to know, but they know back home.
That sheet. Yeah, it hits the stats. It hits-
Belichick knows. So I go through that season. That was really an experience because it's just like my childhood. What happened was I realized I'm here for a reason. And I put something up on Instagram this morning. I was like, I have this serious dose of imposter syndrome where I said, like, maybe I don't deserve to be here. And then I started to realize all this shit that you've been through, Mark, like you deserve to be here. You just need to own it. So when I went back to camp, I had like this new sense of confidence. I'm like, I'm making this team. And I'm not like I know I'm making this team. And it's different when you wear it like that, right? Because you can see someone who's unsure. You won't go to a party and it's like it's a house party. You can see people who are unsure about themselves. The people who are sure about themselves, and some people say, yeah, they're doing this act or they're trying to be humble. You see it or you don't. And then there's other people who like they know who they are, their feet are planted, and this is what it is. Like something happened to me over there where I said, you know what, Mark? Maybe you're not a bad. I used to say I'm a bad athlete. And then they said, wait a minute, how can you be a bad athlete? You play in the NFL. I'm like, well, there's Randy Moss, and then there's like the offensive guard, right? So both great athletes, just different skill sets.
Mhm.
So I just knew I wasn't like the first round downhill linebacker that's super twitchy. He could stand under the rim and do a 360 dunk. That wasn't me.
No.
But I knew what my skill set was. It was studying film, being in the right place. If I have a perfect alignment, I know I don't have to be the fast guy in the field because I'm already in the right spot.
That's right.
So those things are really important to me, and I started to figure those things out when I was in Europe. So when I came back, I played for the Patriots, then left, went to the Bengals, then came back and went to the Patriots again. And that was a special experience for me.
Wow, man. Yeah, no, that shows a lot of kind of the same things and mentalities that maybe people that and kind of the point of this whole podcast thing is like I want others to kind of hear this and understand that hey, even people at the level that you're at and have been at that level still go through those things and those mentalities that kind of get you driving back and forth. And it's like it has to get to a point where you sit down and you say, no, I am as good as I think I am. Or I could be as good as I think I could be. And that's okay, right? Like that mentality is definitely okay.
You know, Will, think about, you watch the NBA playoffs?
Of course, yeah.
How do you say it? Joke it? Is that how you say it? How do you say it?
The Joker is what I call him.
Yeah, I call him Joker. All right, so let's go. Joker. You know what's interesting about Joker? Someone asked him a question the other day after the press conference. Someone says you're as good as LeBron or something. He goes, okay. Like it is, he's not wasting time on it. He doesn't care. He goes, I had 47 points. You can say whatever you want. And he goes, you're not bad, bro. You're not bad. Like I had 47 points. Who else had 47 points in the playoffs? So he's like, he doesn't care. And he's not even cocky about it. It just is. Like he's not wasting time on any of those things. And a lot of players, they're so in their heads. They're so heady that you see how it is, right? You go to the plate, you're in your head, you're not sure. It's over.
Done. You're on the bench again.
Right. There's this, I call it this blank area where you live, where you don't get too high, you don't get too low, you're just in it. And when you're in it, you're just taking it as it comes. You're not overconfident. You're not downplaying yourself. You're just your feet are planted and you're in the moment. That's where you need to be. And Joker's like, I catch the ball, I put it in the basket. He's not like, yeah, simple, 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 simple. And that's why people talk about him. Like when I went to a game, a friend of mine took me to a Heat Nuggets game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at his body and I'm like, oh my God. Like if you compare Joker to LeBron, you're like, it's not even fair.
Yeah, it doesn't compare.
But Joker catches the ball, takes one step, little pivot move, it's in the basket. And he never misses.
Yeah.
Like he never, of course he misses, but it's very rare, right?
Yeah.
So can you be that person that isn't always in your head? I know the best moments of my athletic career or my life, I just don't think about it. Like I have no doubt that person's going to say that about me, but I can't waste too much time on that because I don't want to get that on me. And that's what they think. And 99% of the time, what they think is because of their history. It has nothing to do with me. That's it. You know?
Mark, you just hit it on the head, and I think this brings everything full circle. It's crazy we haven't even talked about the gym, but you said it at the beginning. It's just showing up. You just keep showing up, and it's just like it's not too high, not too low. You don't have to be perfect every day. You just need to keep showing up. Do your job, show up. Right? You talked about your grandfather telling you that when you were a kid and saying, "Oh, I can't believe I got to come back tomorrow." It's like, yeah, just come tomorrow. You don't have to do the same thing. Just come back.
Yeah. I mean, there's always like, you know, team members on a sports team in a business. They say, "Oh, I had, what happened was something happened with my mom. Something happened with I got to go to the doctor. I have a flat tire. The Uber was late. I'm in Miami. There was traffic." I said, "Guys, you don't realize like it's a skill set to keep all that shit away." And I know that's life, and you have to deal with that. But the the goal or the mission is not to let that interrupt your flow and what's essential to your path. Because if there's a reason, like I've charted people like that have trouble being on time, there's 40 reasons on this paper. Maybe two of them are great reasons, but 38,
Crap.
how can you have success? And by the way, not how I define success, how you define success. And they'll go, well, what? But that's success to me. I say, wait a minute. Other people depend on you. Period. And so you don't have the luxury of saying, you know what? I'm going to be late. I'm going to do this, or I don't care, or I'm going to throw my hands in the air and say it doesn't matter. Like the people I've met that have the kind type of success that I would like to have care about those things. They care that someone else is depending on me, so I need to be there. They care. And I think in life, those logistical things, that's the most important part. Like, I don't think Elon Musk is late 3 hours every day, late for three. I mean, I just know that every time I focus on those things, everything else kind of collectively gets better for me.
Yeah, it's the little things. It's very it's again keeping it simple, very simple, right? Don't overcomplicate it. If you need to be somewhere at 8 o'clock and you have trouble getting there at 8, think you're gonna get there at 7 and sit there. Wait till 8. What's the big deal?
Amen. I've said that so many times. I'm like, you can't leave your house at 7:30 and be somewhere at 8 in Miami. I said, are you
It's
insane?
impossible.
I said, it's not gonna happen. I mean, it just doesn't matter. And then they're like, well, I need sleep. Go to bed earlier. That's it, bro. It's not rocket science, and I'm not splitting the atom. I feel bad for your audience because I'm not saying anything special.
No, I love this. I love this because people need to understand that things aren't as hard as we may make them seem, right? People see the finished product, right?
Well, that's it. That's it. Please finish. But that's
go ahead. That's literally it. That's it.
It's exactly what you said. The problem is that if I'm on Instagram and I see a 22-year-old kid in a private plane, we assume that kid built his own thing because he's telling you that he built everything. He's not telling you that that private plane is his girlfriend's father, who's the CEO, who's a billionaire. He's saying, no, I built this company. This is my private plane.
Yeah.
Or he's saying, and I know there's legit dudes out there, and I applaud them. But the point is that we get so focused on other people that we lose track of what micro progressions are happening in our own life. And I always say, like, be where your feet are. Like, I think it's actually really positive if you want a private plane, if you want an awesome car, if you want a crazy house. I think that's good. Like, you should want to better yourself. I love that. But don't get distracted and think that you can look at it from where you are and get it. You got to deal with where you are right now. And I get a lot of feedback I get is like, how come we don't see what you drive? I mean, kids ask me, what do you drive? Where do you live? What's your house look like? And I always go, I tell my wife, I don't want to show any of those things. And here's why, because first of all, it's nothing special, but that's not why. It's like they see it and they're going to say, oh my God, he must be doing so well. And I go, that's going to completely take away from the last 25 years and how hard I've been working and focusing and putting effort in and sacrificing and saving. And they're just going to look at one thing and go, oh, he's a baller. He's doing this.
Yeah.
Go, bro, look at the last 25 years. You know, it's like, how many years have you been in this industry? 2. I'm like, how can you compare yourself to something I've been doing for this 2 decades? It's crazy, you know? And that's when people kind of get in trouble. And it's, as you know, it's not sexy to put time in.
No, it's not.
To do something, get nothing in return, and not put it on Instagram. Like, I need you to know that I was at work at 6 a.m. I need you to know that. I need you to know that I work harder than everyone else. And I always go, according to who? You work hard. I work hard, but a lot of people work hard.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying keep your head down and shut up. I'm saying focus on what you're doing and where your feet are, and you'd be surprised how much progression you can bring into your life or accomplish, call it whatever you want. But like, I think we focus sometimes on the wrong things. And one of the things I ask the prospects that come in, I always say, who do you look up to? Like, who do you follow? Who do you look up to? Because that gives me an understanding of how they see achievement and accomplishment and what they appreciate. So if they say, I like this coach because he's done this, or I like this aesthetic guy who puts up pictures of his abs, I don't think that's bad. It just helps me have a more clear understanding of who is this person and what's important to them.
Mic drop, man. That was amazing, man. Thank you so much. I don't want to take any more of your time. I know that's what we had scheduled, but I'd love to maybe have another time to sit down and talk even more, because this was amazing, man. I give it some time, let this one sit, post it, and maybe we'll have an opportunity to meet one day, because this was great, man.
I would love that. I really appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Did you like it? You enjoyed it? Anything you think we could change, get better at?
I mean, I think I can always get better at listening and do a little bit less.
This wasn't the point for this one, though. It wasn't the point for you to listen. So.
Yeah, but I like to learn from other people too. I mean, listen, this is. I always feel like a podcast. I always try to learn about the people that come on my podcast to a point, because I want to learn. Like, sometimes I study the things. Like, I had a guy on my podcast. He's the winningest coach in college sports history. He's a squash coach. He's won like 17 national championships.
Wow.
But I didn't want to just talk about squash. I wanted to talk about, he's a legendary coach because of who he is as a person and how he coaches kids and how he's empathetic and how all the cool things that coaches do. He's really ahead of his time. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to become obsessed with your achievements or anything, because I want to hear from your mouth what's important to you, and then just go from there. And the best, as you know, the best podcast is just a
conversation, man.
Conversation.
I always write down so much stuff to ask, and I end up just getting so deep into the conversation, and it's next thing you know, the hour's gone, right? So, but That's great, man. Thank you so much for that feedback. I appreciate it. I'm gonna keep doing everything I can to get better, man. And hopefully we can do this again. This was great.
It'll be great. I look forward to it.
Yeah, sure thing.